right, I want to welcome you back into another episode of the Idea Collision. My name is Andrew Green. I'm the host for this podcast. And I've thought about the theme, the title that I've given kind of this section of episodes that we've done. We've talked about contradictions, and we've been talking about the younger generations primarily. And perhaps maybe a better word for this would be paradoxes, because contradictions kind of has a negative connotation to it. I think some of the things that we're talking about the people that have these, I guess, contradictions or paradoxes don't have them with a malicious intent. And so it kind of gets caught up maybe in the idea of hypocrisy, and that's not really the intent of what we're trying to achieve with these lessons. So and as we're talking about them, a lot of the idea is, as we're focusing on the younger generations, that they're not really exclusively the younger generations that do these. So if you're older and you're watching this, you might go, well, that's kind of me too. And as we go through these, I notice these in myself. But we as people are complex. And I think one of the reasons that, and I've kind of explored this a little bit, the reasons that we have these paradoxes in our life is because we kind of put information or ideas or ideals, necessarily not just ideas or as information, but ways we do things, desires, whatever, we kind of assimilate these as we go through life. And it's possible for us to get conflicting ones, and we've talked about that a little bit. As we do so, we don't really notice that they're contradictory until a situation arises where they will come into conflict. If you have an ideal, for example, of wanting to buy quality, and you also have a ideal of wanting to buy cheap, well, those are fine to have as ideals. They come to a point where they will be contradictory in some things. So you can't buy that cheap and quality, So we have these, and there's, as I said, we've been focusing on the younger generations, but I want to talk about a couple of exceptions when we do this that we need to keep in mind. One is that not all millennials or Gen Z or whatever will have these things. You say, well, that's not me. And the other one I've already mentioned is that these can be true of people who are from the baby boomer generation or from Gen X. Those are just as possible to be indicative of them, because we are, at the end of it, we are people. We are human beings, and things have to do with who we are as humans, not just generations. Generations are just groups of people that do a certain thing a certain way because of trends and things and events that happen during their lifetime that kind of generally impact them. So not everyone will be impacted the same way. So a lot of times it's just the technology has changed, and that makes it more observable of how we're doing it. So we're going to talk about kind of one that will overlap a couple of similar over the next couple of weeks. But today we're talking about independence, something that is at least a stated value. And again, see, this is something that I think a lot of people of any generation have as a stated thing that they like. Or would like to be. We want to feel independent of each other. This is, I think, a human craving. We want a lot of the business world, we talk about things like, being your own boss, setting your own schedule, working from home, all these ideals that really have to do with our independence. And I returned to the United States in 2015 from being a missionary in Ukraine. And so got a job as a minister here in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And the one of the first task, I took it upon myself. There was a lot of tasks to do, but one of them was, I looked at the website, and I had looked at it when I was still in Ukraine and still applying for the position, knowing that we were coming back. I didn't know I was going to get the job here, but right away back then I said, these are. This is a website that's going to have to be overhauled if I get this job. It was obvious the age of the person and the era in which it had been designed. And, it was fine for the era in which it designed. Early on, websites were kind of, the white background, not a lot of design to it. Sometimes didn't even have a logo. I don't even think this one had a logo yet, or it did, and I redesigned it. And just a lot of text, paragraphs and paragraphs of text on like every page, and it was just even on the home page had just a lot of text, not a lot of images or anything. The only images, as I found out, was a picture, like a photo page of church events, and the kids in the photos were getting ready to graduate, but in the photos they were like 6 years old, so it hadn't been updated, and most of it was broken links. And anyway, so I decided, well, I'm not really a web designer. I realized that about myself. So I'm a Gen Xer. I'm not super technologically capable. So I went down and I just visited a local, web design place. And what I was expecting and what I got were two different things. One, I wasn't expecting a $10,000 price tag, but before that occurred, I went in, and my expectation was I was going to come in and someone was going to meet me, and I was going to go in and sit in their office, and we were going to talk about what I wanted, and or in their cubicle or whatever. A small place. So I just expected, kind of like a bank, like one or two offices or whatever. Well, what I got was, they said, hey, you want a coffee and whatever, and I went in and I was like, sure. And so I sat down at a table that had the big, tall table, and I sit down, and like 6 people come in, they're all millennials, every one of them. This is not bad. It's just, that's who's doing web design. But they all sat around the table with me, and they all wanted to, they had this question, and this person had this question, and that was kind of how it went. And then afterwards, they called me up with the 10,000 price tag, and I'm like, yeah, I think I'll figure out how to do this myself. So, but the point of that is we got to this word, and I've heard it, and this is the concept, is collaboration, and it's kind of interesting because how collaboration meets independence. It's, there's an ideal of wanting to be independent, but there's still wanting to be involved, and a lot of involvement. My son, described high school, so we came back. We had homeschooled. In fact, we homeschooled for a little while before we put our kids in school, but after we returned. And what he described of school was so far different from anything that I grew up with. I grew up with, you raised your hand to get permission to sharpen your pencil or, whatever. And he's describing to me what felt like pandemonium, because they're all moving around, and they're, you don't whisper to your neighbor, but they're sharing, assignments and looking at how to help each other and do this and that. And it's all very collaborative process. And that wasn't allowed. We did everything on our own. And I'm not saying one is superior over the other. I'm just saying it's different. And where, we were raised to be independent, and that was very much an aspect of my life. I think people still want the independence, but for some reason, there's a kind of a separation between what the ideal is and how that actually practically works in the lives of those who are younger, specifically. And I'll talk a little bit about the causes as we go. So there's this paradoxical craving. I simultaneously want independence, but I also want this collaborative influence of my peers. So, and I think this is, some people believe that this is one of the key differences. We've talked about how Gen Z and millennials are very similar in a lot of ways, and this, some people say, well, this is actually one of those points where the Gen Z, it does differ, where millennials were very dependent both on parents and both on other people, and Gen Z is kind of being a little bit different from them. Maybe so. I'm not sure of that at this point. Um, what I see is still a dependence, at least in the most vulnerable of points, and that you know, it, these both generations are loudly proclaiming, "Well, I don't care what people think about me. You shouldn't care what people think about me." But in light of the statistics that we shared last week, talking about, or the recent weeks talking about depression and suicide attempts and things like that, those statements about "I don't care what people think about me," those ring hollow. Um, there's a dramatic rise in terms of the negative circumstances emotionally and mentally in our youth, and that's not because people don't care about what other people think. That the opposite is very true. It's showing that they're being influenced negatively by the opinions of other people on whatever social media that they are a part of. They're more in tune to these groups that they're a part of in whatever platform they're on, and it's heavily influenced. They're very dependent upon that, and when things don't look right and they're not affirmed, or whatever the case may be, things go very wrong emotionally for them. And again, this is not their fault. This is the world in which they live. It's a product of progress technologically. It's just we are very. The world is a small space. It's a very collaborative space. So, and it's not just the social media, as I say, but technology affects it in a different way, where social media existed in 2004, 2005. Social media existed then, but the numbers didn't jump up yet. What jumped up, and I didn't really cover this last week, what jumped up, starting in 2007 and beyond, really is the availability of that at a moment-by-moment basis. Through cell phones and things like that, now you have the constant access. It's not just at nighttime, I'm going to go check my Facebook page. That was bad enough. But once you have access to it on a constant moment-by-moment basis, now you're aware in real time what people think of you, what other people are projecting themselves to be, falsely, of course, as we talked about. And so there's this constant judgment, or feelings of judgment. And it's really hard for us to be truly independent from the world around us, to the degree that, and this, again, doesn't just affect millennials or Gen Zers or whatever generation you want. We watch, Sunday night is movie night. We do family night. So we're watching a movie, and all of a sudden she's getting a text, whatever, and I have to take the phone and move. It's like, no, this is family time, or we're eating a meal, and we're very dedicated to a meal, family meals together. Lunchtime is lunchtime, but breakfast we have together mostly, and suppers are together. We try to be together, but she's getting text. So the other night she gets a text, and she immediately jumps up. I said, "Sit down." Why are we so dependent upon? What if something happens, right? Then they'll call. If it's really important, they'll call. In fact, they'll call a bunch of times. They don't have to be connected to you on a moment-by-moment basis. They have to feel this need to constantly whatever. And I have to be connected. Something's important. Why? Right? What if? Um, and we feel this need to be so connected to everything that could be, and we're programmed and we've trained ourselves, not just one particular generation. And we get upset. You get upset if somebody doesn't text you right back. Now all the doubt comes in, and oh, did I do something? Did I say something? They're not texting me back. It's been 5 minutes, and they might be mad at me. Did I do something? And there's all this self-doubt, and you can just see how it plays on your emotions because of this need to be connected. You go back 20 years, back when you had the old spiral cord on your phone attached to the wall. Well, you couldn't be connected on a moment-by-moment basis. And you'll notice, again, it's not because we were better as people. It's just because of the structure of society that we didn't have the depressive issues because we weren't that in tune to everyone's thoughts. We didn't know what everybody thought about us. They might be talking about us behind our back, on the phone with somebody else, but occasionally you came across that. Oh, hey, did you hear what somebody said about you or whatever? Oh, no. Right? And that was it. And you dealt with it, but you didn't have it constantly. Oh, did you hear what so-and-so said on Facebook? Oh, you don't even have to do that now, right? You just go on and you have all of everybody's thoughts. And so we're constantly feeling judgment. It's this collaborative thing. Collaboration sounds wonderful, but this constant intertwining of our emotional lives is actually counterproductive. We do need an independent space. We call it safe spaces now. Well, what is a safe space? What? And some people will criticize this idea of safe spaces. Well, it's not new. It's just we didn't need a word for it back before technology existed. We always had an area where we were safe. It was called home, or wherever, but it was an area that was yours, and nobody else came into it. It was an area of independence. We're not designed to be completely isolated from each other. That's unhealthy. But we didn't have a word for a safe space because we didn't have to artificially create it. Now we have to artificially create a space where people don't come into my life because, my technology is there. It's constantly at me, boom, 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 all the time. This is ringing, this is buzzing, this is dinging, whatever, and I'm getting all of this, it's oversaturated in my life. So we do need, in a sense, a safe space. It's not, I don't want to get into the snowflake thing or whatever, but I need that space. Home should be a space where I can say, you know what, I'm turning it off. Turn off your phone. When is your phone ever off? You never turn off your phone. The only time your phone is ever off is when it's charged down and you forgot to plug it in. And then, you get, hey, what happened to your phone? Where were you? Oh, yeah, my phone died. Sorry, I didn't know. And everyone's upset. So it's like this over collaboration. We never unplug. We're never separate. There's always some sort of major thing happening in life that we have to be involved in. So the next thing that's happened in this with the younger generation, the next aspect of this is this idea of a group mentality, because they're so into groups. And then again, not just younger people, but this is of all ages. If you're plugged in now, every age has or whatever their group is. It's not even by age, it's by group. However you identify, there's a group identity, and that group has beliefs. That group has ideals, viewpoints that you're supposed to have, so much so that it's most demonstratable through politics, and I won't get into it, but you can do it. You can pick one viewpoint, listen to someone that, they have this viewpoint, or whatever it is, whatever side, whatever view, and you can tell. I'm telling you, what they think on 20 other issues without just from one viewpoint, because it's like very monolithic. This is the group, we all collaborate, sort of. Our viewpoints are all collaborative. They're all out there. They're all disseminated. These are the accepted viewpoints for this group, right? If you step out of line on this one, well, you're out of line. We can't say, well, yeah, but he's got, these 10 viewpoints are within our group, and okay, so he's off on this one. No, you've got to right in line. Otherwise, now the judgment comes, and so you have to be right in line, or there's something wrong with you, right? And so there's this groupthink that happens, and nobody's like that. I have my own views. I have differing views from people that are very similar, but maybe not identical. But there's this pressure to think like them that I feel, and I probably place on other people even, which we get to in a second here. So there's really it's very difficult now to be an independent person, right? The problem is not by the way, the problem is not the dependent person. That's what this comes down to. It sounds like I'm blaming the dependent people. They are a product of their environment, and who's created the environment? We have created. Everybody else has created the environment for them, and I suppose they could practice, and that's good to try to practice independence and stepping out from the group and sharing your own ideas, regardless of what, and how it's going to be received. It would be good to try to unplug from the media every once in a while, unplug from the groups and the friends, and say, I'm just turning it off. That would be a way to practice a little independence. Another is, I've done this more and more, whereas I don't have to comment on this particular discussion, whatever it is. That's a way of practicing this kind of self-control, but from a different perspective, how to foster independence, not total isolation, but a genuine, healthy independence, is to do this from the other side, from how I'm influencing other people's need for approval. See, I notice this in myself every once in a while, and I'm like, I have to step back. I criticize my kids' music all the time because it's not music, right? It's like I can't stand this stuff. It's like, I haven't liked music really, quite frankly. I'm out of step with a lot of my own generation's music. I don't even like anything past 1987. To me, the death of music was Guns N' Roses, and I think anything after that, it was no longer music. And then I was an 80s person. 1987, it was done. But I constantly criticize my kids' music, and I can see what it does to them. And it's not just that; it's anything cultural. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you guys do that. And I'm constantly making them feel like their opinions are, and it's just an opinion. If you like techno music, whatever, it's just an opinion. That's not music, and it's like, that's not whatever, or this is the real way to be. And I'm constantly creating this idea that they have to conform to the identity. What's the identity? The identity is the family identity. You have to like these foods. You have to like this music. You have to like this clothing. You like that's. And I'm constantly pushing the ideal of what I grew up with or what I like, right? And that's silly. But I'm delegitimizing, through a silly way, I'm delegitimizing their feeling of independence. And it's destructive in other ways, because I can create a situation where they want to completely disassociate from that and seek independence by doing things that they shouldn't do. Legitimately shouldn't do, because of this feeling of wanting to be independent. There's like this collaboration and dependence, and I can yet create, while I'm creating this feeling for independence, I can create this desire for them to be approved of and liked, their need for society, and whether big or small society, a small group or whatever, and I can compel them to seek that in a way that's not healthy. Uh, so I need to learn personally, and we as people need to learn to allow other people to be themselves, especially where it's healthy. Obviously, not where it's unhealthy, but train them to be truly independent, collaborate when necessary, and when that's healthy. Because this ends up being a statement about me, not about them, right? I can help create the situation. You can help create the situation and foster the right environment in your own home, in your circle of friends. When somebody wants to express a different opinion, that's fine. That's cool. Whatever. I don't have to correct them on anything. Sometimes I really feel urgently like this is out of line, and I have to know what are really truly important and what isn't vital, and not correct everything. Even some things that probably should be corrected eventually, I don't have to do it right in that moment, right? So, because when I'm doing this, what I'm conveying to them, at least subconsciously, is that their independence threatens me. Like I'm not going to be whole. I'm not going to be satisfied or fulfilled if they have this different opinion of me. There's a statement in the scriptures. I do try to make this spiritual. I don't. It's not a Bible scripture search, but this idea is in the Bible, and in numerous ways, God says, we do work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. All right. In other words, there is a healthy respect that we need to have for things while we're developing ourselves spiritually. In other words, I can't just do what I want. But I do have to be independent. I have to figure things out a little bit for myself. I can take advice from other people. I can listen to other people. But eventually, it ultimately rests upon me. I have to develop some independent thought at some point in time. I can't have your faith or your religion. We can collaborate, meaning I can learn from you, but I do have to make my own decisions, and that has to be my own faith ultimately. There is a healthy mix. There's a time to be independent. There's a time to be dependent. So this week, what I want you to do is to, if you are a person that struggles with feelings of dependence and heavily you feel emotionally, linked to other people, and things aren't right if they're not approving of you, it might be time to unplug for a while. And but for those of you who don't necessarily have that problem, try to see where you can empower somebody to be dependent. Let them learn how to think for themselves, solve problems by themselves, state their opinions without judgment, without approval or disapproval. Just let it be, and interact and let people be individuals. This world would look horrible if we were all identical, and I think that's one of the reasons why the world looks worse now than it did, some years ago. Is this idea that everybody has to conform to one ideal, and we all have to look identical. This pure collaborative type of a mentality that we have in society. But go out there, empower somebody. Like this video, please, and subscribe. Forward it to people. Share it. However, but these thoughts, I think, are beneficial. That's what I attempt to do through this podcast, is to try to benefit people, and give you about a half an hour of something each week to really make life a better place in the world where you're at.